Here is the recap of the first 5 seasons of Lost series. A plane heading from Sydney to Los Angeles suddenly crashes and breaks into several pieces in mid-air. The middle part falls on the shore of the island, and the survivors try to save everyone they can. At night, they hear strange loud noises coming from the forest, and see something ripping out trees from their roots. From now on, I'll call it a monster. In the morning, the main characters realize that they need to somehow send a distress signal to be found. A powerful radio was in the cockpit of an airplane that went down in the jungle nearby. Neurosurgeon Jack, ex-musician Charlie, and fugitive criminal Kate go in search of the cockpit. When they find it, they climb inside. While Charlie searches the restroom for his hidden stash of illegal substances, Jack and Kate find a radio. They learn from the seriously injured pilot that earlier their plane went off course. They flew in the wrong direction for several hours because of the loss of communication. Therefore, no one will simply find them. Suddenly, the monster reappears and kills the pilot. But the rest of the main characters manage to escape. One of the survivors, a USA Marshal, is seriously wounded, and Jack tries to help him. From him, he learns that Kate is not who she says she is, and is actually a criminal. However, Jack is not going to do anything with this information as he is attracted to Kate, and the Marshal ends up dying from his wounds. Meanwhile, the main characters try to contact someone on the radio, but the signal does not pass. Syed, being a military man, realizes that they need to climb higher and heads deep into the jungle with a group of other survivors. Along the way, they are attacked by a polar bear, and Sawyer kills it with a gun he found in the Marshal's stuff. Soon they reach high ground and turn on the radio. However, they can't contact anyone because of the constant signal, which is looped and coming from somewhere on the island. It is in French, and a woman named Shannon translates it. In it, some French woman reports that she is alone on the island, and something has killed everyone else. Syed figures out that the signal's been playing already for 16 years. Before the crash, John Locke worked as an ordinary manager and was unable to walk, but had always dreamed of traveling around Australia. When Locke regains consciousness on the beach, he realizes that he can walk again. He begins to think that their appearance on the island is fate. Soon the survivors run out of food and Locke goes hunting, as he has been interested in such things all his life. In the jungle he meets the same monster, but the unknown enemy does not attack him, because of which the man becomes even more convinced of the peculiarity of this island. However, when he returns from the hunt, he does not tell anyone about what he saw. Jack begins to see hallucinations of his dead father. It turns out that in the past, the man went to Australia because he learned that his father had died from excessive alcohol consumption. Jack loaded the coffin with the body onto an airplane, but was unable to find it on the island. The hallucinations grow stronger, and Jack thinks he is going mad, but Locke advises him to give in to them, as he thinks the island has something to tell him. Just then, the survivors run out of fresh water and no one knows what to do. Soon, Jack, following the hallucinations, finds caves where there is a spring. There, he also discovers a coffin, but it turns out to be empty. Jack returns to the beach and informs everyone that they have a difficult decision to make. Maybe help will never arrive, so to survive, they will have to go to the caves where there is water, and it is easier to defend themselves against wild boars and the intense heat. Some people agree to move to the caves, but some stay on the beach to keep a fire going for rescuers who might see them. In the past, a married couple from Korea had relationship difficulties because Jin worked for his wife Soon's father and did dirty work for him. The woman wanted to run away from her husband, but changed her mind at the last moment and boarded a plane with him. On the island, they have trouble communicating with other survivors as they don't know English, but it turns out Sun actually studied the language behind her husband's back and is now keeping it a secret. One day, Jin attacks one survivor named Michael, but no one can figure out what happened between them. Sun has to tell Michael her secret, and she reveals that her husband attacked him because he thought he stole his watch. Actually, Michael just found it in some stuff and thought it didn't belong to anyone. Jin is handcuffed due to his aggressiveness, but Michael eventually frees him. A group of survivors begin to settle in the caves, and the main characters discover two very old corpses there. A man and a woman, as well as a bag with two stones, white and black. Their identities will be revealed to us only in the 6th season. Meanwhile, Charlie continues to use the illegal substances he took from the airplane, and John Locke finds out about it. He offers the guy to quit, and in return, he'll give him the guitar he recently found. Charlie really misses music, so he agrees. Except that soon he goes into withdrawal and begs Locke to give him his powder. However, in the end, Charlie manages to overcome his addiction. Said, being a former military officer, is a technical expert and wants to find out where the French woman's signal is being transmitted from. He decides to place the 3 antennas he has assembled at a distance from each other, and in this way find out where the transmission is taking place. All this has to be done at the same time, so he asks for help from the other main characters. However, at the most crucial moment, someone knocks Sid out, breaks the equipment, and prevents him from finding out where the signal is coming from. Sawyer was a scammer in the past and earned money by deceiving gullible people. It turns out that when he was a child, his parents were scammed by the same type, which caused his father to kill his mother, and then himself. Sawyer spent his whole life looking for this swindler, and did not notice how he became the one he hated the most. The man's name is actually different, and Sawyer is a nickname. On the island, he decided to take advantage of the situation and grabbed a large amount of useful items from things he found in the wrecked airplane. These items he traded from the survivors for various favors and food. One day, Shannon has an asthma attack, and her half-brother Boone tried to find an inhaler in Sawyer's stuff, for which he was beaten up. Jack and Sayid realize that a woman's life depends on this medicine, so they have no choice but to torture Sawyer. Turns out he really doesn't have an inhaler. However, the woman is helped by Sun, who uses various herbs to ease Shannon's suffering. Sayid, ashamed of torturing Sawyer, decides to leave the camp for a while and explore the island alone. We're shown his background. The man was a communications officer in the Iraqi army and was in love with a woman his superiors wanted to execute. Sayid managed to save her, and after a while his base is captured by the American military. After that, Sayid starts working for the CIA and deals with torture. When he finished his service, he found out about where exactly his beloved was and went to her, but during the flight he crashed and ended up on an island. In the present day, Sayid is walking along the beach and finds a cable that runs from the water to the depths of the island. He follows it and gets trapped. Sayid wakes up tied up, and some woman demands him to tell her where her daughter Alex is. The man doesn't understand what's going on, and eventually guesses that it's the same French woman whose distress signal has been playing for 16 years. Her name is Danielle Rousseau, and she's a bit of a cuckoo. She was part of a scientific team that was shipwrecked on this island. Then they started dying of an unknown disease. She also talks about the other people on the island, which she calls the others. They are the ones who kidnapped her daughter. Sayid doesn't really believe the crazy Rousseau and ends up running away, taking her map with her notes. However, on the way back, Sayid hears mysterious whispers coming from the forest and begins to suspect that the others actually exist. A young woman named Claire got pregnant by a guy who soon left her. She was afraid that she couldn't cope alone and thought of giving the child up for adoption. One day, Claire comes to a psychic, and he behaves very strangely, as if he really knows where she will end up in the future. First, he begs her to keep the baby, and then he gives her money and persuades her to go to Los Angeles, where she can give the baby to a good family, but the plane crashes and Claire finds herself on an island. Nowadays, she has ominous dreams for several days in a row. She believes that someone wants to harm her baby, but the others don't believe her. During the 2 weeks she has been here, Claire has become close to Charlie, but he doesn't really believe the impressionable pregnant woman either. Because of everything that happened earlier, a guy named Hurley decides to make a list of survivors to see who is who in general, so he interviews all the people around him. Soon he checks his list against the airplane's passenger list and discovers that one man named Ethan didn't fly with them. Just at this time, Claire becomes sick, and Charlie rushes to get a doctor but stumbles upon Ethan. the man kidnaps the couple and takes them somewhere in the jungle. Meanwhile, Kate and Jack meet Syed, who tells them about the so-called others, and Hurley adds to all this with what he learned while making a list of survivors. Several of the main characters run into the jungle to find Charlie and Claire. They have to split up, and Jack meets Ethan, who advises him not to pursue them or someone will get hurt. Jack doesn't listen to him, and Ethan beats up the doctor. After that, the main characters stumble upon the hanged Charlie. However, Jack manages to save him. Locke and Boone are still looking for Claire, but soon it starts to get dark. Boone drops his flashlight, which hits something metal. The main characters dig up the ground and discover a hatch to the bunker. Locke decides not to tell anyone about what they found. Over the course of several episodes, the man tries to figure out how to get inside, remembering his past. Years ago, his father, whom he had never met before, contacted him. In a short time, they become close, but eventually it turns out that his father used him to get a kidney from him. After the surgery, the old man cuts all ties with his son, and Locke feels cheated. Throughout the series, we are repeatedly shown how gullible and easily influenced this character is. Sawyer and Kate grow close and begin to have feelings for each other. Soon they find the suitcase of the very marshal from the airplane. However, the woman does not want anyone to know what exactly is inside. Sawyer and Kate unsuccessfully attempt to open the case, but Jack eventually succeeds. Inside, they discover several guns, as well as an envelope, which Kate takes. There turns out to be a toy airplane that belonged to her lover. From the flashbacks, we learn that he died because of Kate. While Boone and Locke try to figure out how to open the hatch to the bunker, Syed asks Shannon to help him translate Rousseau's notes on the maps he stole from her. The translation goes nowhere, but a romantic relationship begins between Syed and Shannon. Soon, Locke gives Syed a compass, and he discovers that north is not actually where the arrow is pointing. However, the main characters cannot find any reasonable explanation for this. Suddenly, Claire emerges from the jungle. It turns out she doesn't remember anything from the moment she got on the plane. Charlie is upset as she has no memory of their relationship either. In the morning, Ethan shows up and demands that they give Claire back, or he will kill them one by one. What the man actually does the next day. The main characters decide to use the weapon from the case and set a trap for Ethan. They use Claire as bait and eventually they catch the man. Jack wants to interrogate him, however Charlie shows up and kills Ethan for everything he did earlier. We're shown Michael's past. It turns out that after his divorce, his wife took his son Walt and went to Australia with him. A few years later, the woman dies, and her current husband contacts Michael. It turns out he doesn't want to keep Walt, as the boy is very strange and, when he's around, something is always happening. Michael goes to Australia. He takes his own son and flies to Los Angeles, but crashes on the way. On the island, Michael tries to establish a relationship with Walt, but nothing comes out. However, the man does not intend to sit idly by and decides to build a raft to get off the island. Meanwhile, Jin learns that Sun knows English and that his wife has wanted to leave him in the past. Jin realizes that he is to blame for all of this. So he leaves Sun in shame and helps Michael build a raft to save his wife. We're shown Hurley's past. It turns out that he was treated in a mental institution, and there met a man who was always saying the same numbers: 4, 8, 15, 16, 23, and 42. When Hurley got out of the asylum, he decided to play the lottery. By betting on these numbers, he won $114 million. However, after that, strange events began to happen around him. Although nothing happened to him personally, there were incidents around him that could be described as unfortunate. And eventually he ended up on an island. Now the guy believes that the numbers are cursed, and it was because of him that the plane crashed. Soon he discovers the same numbers on a French woman Rousseau's map and goes in search of her to find out what they mean. Hurley eventually finds her, and she tells the following story. It turns out there was originally a signal coming from the island that played these numbers non-stop. Their ship was wrecked when they tried to find out where the message was coming from. Her crew later found a radio tower where they contracted an unknown disease. Rousseau later replaced this signal with the one the main characters heard. Frenchwoman agrees with Hurley that numbers really can be cursed. The guy is glad he is not crazy, but he does not yet know that the same numbers are engraved on the very bunker that Locke and Boone are slowly digging up. Boone's patience begins to wear thin as they can't find a way to open the hatch, but Locke assures him that the island will tell them the way. Soon the man has a strange dream and realizes that they need to find a plane in the jungle. They finds it hanging on a cliff. Boone climbs up, and inside he discovers Virgin Mary figurines filled with illegal substances. The plane was a smuggler's transport. Boone tries to radio someone and even gets a response, but suddenly the plane goes down. Locke retrieves the mortally wounded guy and carries him back to camp on his back. However, it's too late, and Boone ends up dead. Locke returns to the bunker and knocks on the hatch in desperation as suddenly a bright light bursts out of his window. The main characters think that it was Locke who killed Boone, and Sayid tries to find out all the details of his death. Together with Locke, he goes to the crashed airplane, and it turns out that the old man is not lying. However, Sayid learns that it was Locke who hit him on the head when he was installing antennas to find the source of the Frenchwoman's signal. Locke says that he saved them all that way, since they soon find out that that's where Rousseau's team got infected with something. Sayid asks to take him and Jack to the hatch, as they heard about it from Boone before his death. Locke takes them there, and they agree that the bunker needs to be opened somehow. Claire goes into labor. She doesn't make it to the caves in time and gives birth right in the jungle. However, the baby is fine. A few days later, Rousseau appears on the beach and tells everyone that they are in danger because of the black smoke on the horizon. It turns out the same thing happened to their group. After the smoke appeared, the others came and took her daughter Alex, so she wants to help protect Claire's baby. The main characters realize that they urgently need to open a bunker to have at least some shelter from the others. Rousseau tells them where they can find the explosives, and several people go to get them. On the way, they are attacked again by the same monster from earlier in the season, and Rousseau tells them that it's a kind of defense system for the island. A little later, we see what it is. It's just black smoke, which nevertheless can grab its victims. The main characters manage to escape from the smoke, and soon they reach an old wooden ship, which is located deep in the jungle. Rousseau leaves them, and the main characters try to carefully retrieve dynamite from there. One of the survivors dies because of this, and the others carefully carry the explosives back. Meanwhile, Rousseau gets to the beach and kidnaps Claire's baby. The rest of the main characters follow her, and on the way, Charlie stumbles upon the very airplane filled with illegal substances. Soon, Sayid and Charlie get to the place where the black smoke was coming from, and find Rousseau and the baby there. We learn that a desperate woman kidnapped the baby to try to trade it for her daughter Alex, who was taken by the others years ago. Turns out she heard them whispering in the jungle about taking the boy. However, no one ever came. Rousseau gives up the baby, and the main characters return him to Claire. At this time, Michael, Walt, Jin, and Sawyer launch their ship and set out on their journey. Soon they turn on the radar and discover a ship nearby. They fire a flare, and a few minutes later, a boat arrives. However, these are not rescuers. They call the main characters by name and, threatening them with guns, demand that they give them the boy. They eventually take Walt away. The main character's ship is blown up, and Jin, Michael, and an injured Sawyer end up in the water. Meanwhile, Locke, Jack, Hurley, and Kate make it to the bunker and plant the explosives. Suddenly, Hurley notices the numbers on the wall of the bunker and yells for the main characters to stop. However, it is too late. After the explosion, they look inside and see a narrow passage with a broken ladder at the very top. This is the end of the first season. The main characters argue about whether they should go down into the bunker and at first split up to think things over. Soon, Locke and Kate return with a rope. When the woman goes down, a bright light comes on and she disappears somewhere. After which, Locke decides to go after her. Inside, he discovers a rather large bunker with a symbol in the form of a swan and the name Dharma. Then a man named Desmond points a gun at him. At first he thinks he's been sent a replacement, but when he asks Locke for the password and he doesn't answer, Desmond begins to think of them as his enemies. After a while, Jack returns to the bunker and also goes down. There he discovers a dome-shaped room with equipment. Suddenly Locke appears, held at gunpoint by a man, and Jack recognizes him as someone he saw a few years ago. Back when he was in Los Angeles, he performed a very difficult surgery on a woman who later became his wife. Jack agonized that he might fail as there was almost no chance of success. He went to the stadium to clear his head, and there he met Desmond, who was also running there like him. The men chatted and Desmond encouraged Jack with his words, after which the operation was a success. Desmond holds the main characters at gunpoint and learns that they survived a plane crash on the island. Suddenly, a freed Kate appears and knocks the man down. This causes Desmond to pull the trigger, and the bullet hits the computer. He claims the whole world will die if they don't fix it. While Kate runs after Syed through the emergency exit, Desmond tells them what's going on here. He, like the main characters, ended up on the island by accident when he got caught in a storm on his boat 3 years ago. He was rescued by a man who very convincingly explained to him that every 108 minutes you have to enter certain numbers into the computer. By the way, these are the same numbers from the previous season. The main characters don't believe him at first, but he gives them a tape where a scientist tells them that this bunker called Swan was built as a research station. However, due to some incident, there is now a buildup of electromagnetic energy that needs to be dumped every 108 minutes. If this is not done, the end of the world will happen. Soon Desmond starts to freak out and thinks that they won't be able to press the button, so he runs away into the jungle wishing the main characters good luck. Syed comes to the bunker and manages to fix the computer. At the last moment, Jack enters the combination and the countdown resets. After that, the main characters start to be on duty in the bunker and press the button every 108 minutes. Let's go back in time a little bit. After the main character's boat is blown up at the end of the previous season, the men find themselves in the water. However, Jin has disappeared somewhere. Mike and the wounded Sawyer drift on the wreckage for a while and find themselves near the island again. Once ashore, they see Jin running, shouting the word "others." Then a group of people appear, and they knock out the main characters. They are dumped into a cage pit, and strangers try to find out who they are. After they reveal that they are survivors of a plane crash, they are released. It turns out these unknowns are also survivors, except from the tail section that went down on the other side of the island. Their leader, Ana Lucia, doesn't behave very friendly, and takes the main characters to an abandoned Dharma station called Arrow. There, a woman named Libby tells them what happened to them. It turns out that originally there were 23 of them, but the first night the others showed up and kidnapped 3 of them, and after a while, a few more, including children. The main characters manage to kill one of the kidnappers and find his list of names, that is, those whom they were supposed to take. Ana Lucia realizes that there is a spy among them and begins to suspect one guy. She puts him in a pit and plans to torture him. Except the traitor turns out to be another man, named Goodwin. He kills the guy in the pit and makes it look like he escaped so he won't be discovered. However, Ana Lucia guesses he's the spy. Goodwin assures her that the kidnapped people are okay since they are on the good list, but the others are bad. The couple fights, and Ana Lucia kills Goodwin. After a while, the survivors find Jin on the shore and tie him up. He manages to escape, and we know what happened next. In the present time, Michael decides to go in search of his son and gets separated from the group. Jin and Mr. Echo follow him to convince him to return. Soon, Mr. Echo orders them to hide, and they see a group of men in rags walk past them completely silently. They eventually find Michael and convince him to return. Meanwhile, Sawyer becomes ill from an injury he received on the ship. At first, the group wants to abandon him, but Michael convinces them to carry him to the camp where he can be helped by a doctor named Jack. On the way, one woman is kidnapped by the others, and Ana Lucia retrieves the gun she took from Sawyer. Meanwhile, on the other side of the island, Shannon sees Walt in the woods and tells everyone else, but no one believes her. not even Saeed, with whom she is in a relationship. Eventually, the man decides to believe her after all and goes with her to search for the boy. Suddenly, they both hear whispers and see Walt. Shannon then runs off after him alone. Suddenly, a gunshot rings out and Saeed finds Shannon dead, but it was Ana Lucia who killed her, having mistaken the woman for one of the others. Everyone starts blaming each other as Shannon is dead, even though it was a tragic accident. Eventually, however, things are settled, and the second group joins the survivors on the beach. Only Ana Lucia feels like an outcast, as everyone now distrusts her. By the way, the woman worked for the police before the crash and was almost killed in the line of duty. After that, she withdrew into herself, started drinking, and became more aggressive. Meanwhile, Bernard from the second group of survivors is reunited with his wife Rose from the first group, and Sawyer manages to get medical help in time and comes to his senses. One day, it is Michael's turn to sit at the computer. Suddenly, a beep sounds and a greeting pops up on the screen. Michael answers and then receives a message letting him know that it is his kidnapped son, Walt. He secretly communicates with him for a while, and Walt asks him to go alone to the specified location. Michael retrieves a rifle from the bunker's armory and goes after his son. The rest of the main characters follow him to convince him to return, but soon meet the bearded boat captain who kidnapped Walt in Season 1. He says that the main characters are surrounded and informs them that there is now a border that they are not allowed to cross, or they will all be killed. We are told the story of Mr. Echo. He was born in Nigeria, and to protect his brother, he joined the bandits. Years later, his brother becomes a priest, and Mr. Echo becomes a bloodthirsty bandit leader. One day, he decides to send a large batch of illegal substances on an airplane under the cover of church documents and put them in statuettes of the Virgin Mary. Everything does not go according to plan. His brother is accidentally killed and the plane flies away with his body. After that, it disappears somewhere, and Mr. Echo stays and becomes a priest. Now he learns that Charlie carries with him a statue of the Virgin Mary and demands that he shows where exactly he found it. Moreover, he breaks the statue, and Claire sees illegal substances there. Charlie agrees to take him to the downed plane, and on the way they encounter black smoke, which this time we can see more clearly. However, the smoke does nothing to them. Eventually, Charlie leads him to the plane, and Mr. Echo finds his dead brother. Claire doesn't want to be around Charlie because he's a drug addict. The guy swears that he hasn't used anything for a long time, but Claire doesn't believe him. And we see that Charlie has a big stash of several statues of the Virgin Mary. One day he has a dream in which Claire's baby is in danger, and when he wakes up he finds himself standing by the water holding him. Later, after talking to Mr. Echo, Charlie begins to believe that the baby should be baptized so that nothing can happen to it, but makes things worse, which causes Locke to beat him up when he tries to kidnap the baby. Also, the old man finds his stash of statues and takes them, and at the end of the episode, Claire herself asks Mr. Echo to baptize the baby. Some survivors think they need to train people to stand up to the others, but some characters don't want to create an army. Just then, someone tries to kidnap Sun, and the group begins to disagree on where the weapons should be. However, in the end, Sawyer sets things up so that he can take all the guns for himself and declare himself the new sheriff. He did this because no one wanted to give him back his stuff, which had been taken apart while he was on the boat. It turns out that Sawyer put Charlie up to kidnapping Sun because Charlie wanted to make things unpleasant for Locke. Nevertheless, the weapon is eventually returned to the bunker. I won't focus on that since it doesn't really matter how it happened. Sayid meets Rousseau in the jungle, and she asks him to follow her. The woman leads him to a stranger hanging in her trap and claims he is one of the others. Sayid returns with him to the bunker, and they lock him in a storage room. Soon Sayid begins to torture him, and the man reveals that his name is Henry, and he got here in a hot air balloon with his wife a few weeks ago. His wife died of some disease, and he buried her under the wreckage of the balloon. Henry sounds very convincing, so some of the main characters start to believe him. However, Sayid has his doubts and decides to check out his story. With other survivors, he goes to the crash site and even finds the grave. In the bunker, the main characters find quite a lot of food. Hurley is assigned to make sure that no one takes too much and distributes everything equally. However, the guy realizes that the food will not last long, and eventually everyone will hate him, so he immediately gives away all the leftovers. After a while, sympathy develops between him and Libby. The woman claims to be a psychologist, but in fact, she was in the same mental hospital as Hurley. Turns out he was there because of schizophrenia. An imaginary personality convinced him that eating too much was normal, but he eventually got over it. When the survivors found the bunker on the island and the food in it, Hurley started to overeat again. But Libby encouraged him. He started eating normally and got rid of his stash of high-calorie food. However, soon an entire pallet of food from Dharma is dropped from the sky. Let's also immediately go over more notable flashbacks of the main characters. We finally learn exactly what Kate did before the crash. It turns out she killed her stepfather, who was beating up her mother. However, her mom couldn't forgive her for that. Syed was serving in Iraq and his military base was overrun by American soldiers. He learns that his commander in the past ordered the elimination of an entire village with civilians. Syed then begins working for the CIA and engages in torture. Before the disaster, Sun and Jin tried to have a child, but it turned out that the man was infertile. And when the relationship with her husband became quite bad, Sun began to cheat on him. On the island, she finds out that she is pregnant and fears that the child is not Jin's, but her lover's. However, she tells her husband that she is expecting a child. Before the crash, Rose was terminally ill with cancer, but when she got to the island, she felt normal. Her husband Bernard at first tried to find some way to leave the place, but when he learned that his wife was better, he agreed to stay with her until the end. Claire's baby gets a rash. Suddenly, Rousseau arrives and informs her that he is infected with something. Soon, Claire begins to remember the events of her abduction in the previous season. It turns out she was brought to some bunker where she was injected with a medication that caused her mind to be confused. The doctors were friendly, including Ethan. For a while, they prepared her for labor, but soon a young woman named Alex showed up and helped Claire out of the bunker. She began to resist, as due to the medicine, she didn't realize the danger she was in if she stayed. Rousseau appeared, knocked her out, and dragged her to the survivors' camp, where she was found. In the present, Claire realizes that she needs to find the vaccine, which was injected by doctors in the bunker, and together with Rousseau, and Kate goes there. However, the station has already been abandoned, and by the way, its symbol is the caduceus. The women don't find the vaccine and go back, and Kate discovers a drawer containing dirty clothes, false beards, and makeup that the others use to transform themselves into wild men. Meanwhile, Charlie finds the vaccine Claire was looking for and gives it to her. After that, the relationship between the two begins to mend. Charlie also finally destroys all the Virgin Mary figurines by throwing them into the ocean. While Syed and the other survivors try to confirm Henry's story about the balloon crash, the captive manipulates Jack and Locke, turning them against each other. One day, Locke hears strange static coming from the bunker's speakers, and suddenly the alarm sounds. The blast doors then close, leaving the main characters on the other side of the computer, and a button needs to be pressed in the next few minutes. Locke frees Henry, opens the doors with a tire iron and tries to climb through. However, his legs get pinned down. Then he asks Henry to climb through the vent and press the button, which he does at the very last moment. While Locke lies crushed, a fluorescent lamp comes on and displays a map with the other Dharma stations. After that, everything goes back to normal, and the main characters can't achieve such an effect anymore. Just at this time, Syed returns with the other survivors. They tell that Henry's story is confirmed, and they found the grave right under the balloon, just as he said. However, that wasn't enough for Syed, and after digging it up, they find the real Henry's papers, which means the man in front of them is indeed one of the others. They interrogate him again, but the man claims he will be killed if he talks. He also provokes Locke by assuring him that the bunker is just a joke, and nothing really happens if you don't push the button. Ana Lucia interrogates Henry, but he suddenly attacks her and nearly kills the woman. Locke manages to save her in time. In the past, when Ana Lucia worked for the police and was almost killed while on duty, she found the shooter and killed him herself. On the island, a woman also wants revenge on Henry for the attack. She seduces Sawyer and steals his gun. Meanwhile, Jack thinks they can trade Henry for Walt, and together with Kate go to the border marked by the others. However, when they get there, an exhausted Michael runs out of the woods. Together they go back, and when the man regains consciousness, he tells them that he has tracked down the others. There are not many of them, and they live much worse than the group of survivors. Michael suggests that they go to them in a small group and free Walt. When everyone leaves the bunker, Michael is alone. Ana Lucia shows up and tells him that she didn't dare kill Henry. Michael offers his help in doing so. However, when Ana Lucia gives him the gun, he kills her and also Libby, who has appeared as she was a witness. He then opens the back room, frees Henry, and shoots himself in the arm. He makes it look like Henry killed the women, wounded him, and then escaped. Locke tries to remember the map he saw on the blast door, but he cannot reproduce it. At this time, Mr. Echo has a vision and realizes that he must help Locke in his search, specifically to find a certain question mark. Together, they go to the fallen airplane, and when Echo climbs up and looks down from the cliff, he sees that very question mark. They push the fallen airplane away and find the entrance to yet another bunker. It turns out to be a tracking station called the Pearl. This is where the chairs and monitors are located. On one of them, they see their bunker. The main characters discover another tape, where the same scientist tells what exactly a person should do at this station. According to him, the rest of the people in the bunkers are subjected to a psychological experiment, and the operator's task is to note all the oddities in their behavior and other unusual phenomena. Then to write it all down in a log, and when it is finished, to send it by pneumatic mail. Locke gets angry and refuses to press the button anymore, believing the scientist on the tape. However, Mr. Echo, on the contrary, thinks it's very important, and now he starts watching the numbers being entered into the computer. Suddenly, on the beach, the main characters see a boat in the distance and make their way onto it, where they meet a drunk Desmond. We finally learn his story. Back in the past, the man was kicked out of the army and was ashamed to return to his lover named Penny. And her father, Charles Widmore, a very powerful man, didn't want such a coward getting close to his daughter. So Desmond decides to prove he's worth something. He takes part in a sailing race around the world, but ends up getting caught in a storm. He is rescued by a man in a hazmat suit and dragged to the bunker. Kelvin tells him what he is doing here, and they take turns at the button for 3 years. Desmond is strictly forbidden to go out, as there is a dangerous virus on the island that can kill them all. Kelvin also tells him that if everything goes wrong, there is a special fuse, but it is unknown what will happen if they turn this key. Desmond soon learns that Kelvin has been lying to him, and there is no virus, and the man has been secretly repairing his boat all this time to escape the island, leaving Desmond to push the button. The men start fighting, and Desmond accidentally kills Kelvin. He presses the button for a while, but begins to go cuckoo and even decides to end his life. However, he suddenly hears a knock on the lid of the bunker and realizes that not all is lost. By the way, it was Locke who knocked when Boone died in the previous season. In the present tense, Desmond tells us that he could not leave the island. Every time he sailed away from it, he found himself back on its shores. We find out exactly what happened to Michael when he went to Walt's earlier. Along the way, he is caught by others and brought to their camp where they live like savages, but guard some door to another bunker. Soon a woman comes to him and starts asking various questions about his son Walt, and then offers him a deal. If he will free Henry, and also bring Jack, Kate, Sawyer, and Hurley to them, they will then release him and Walt, and also give them a boat to get off the island. Michael is given 3 minutes to talk to his son, and the man agrees to the deal. In the present, Michael argues with the rest of the main characters and convinces them that only certain people should go along with him to free Walt. Syed finds this odd and shares his thoughts with Jack. Then they guess that Michael is probably trying to lead them into a trap. So the main characters decide to be on the safe side, and while Michael's group goes to the specified place, Syed, along with Jin and Sun, swim there on a boat. The plan is for them to catch the others off guard and light a signal fire for the rest of the main characters. Along the way, Saeed notices the wreckage of an incredibly huge statue on the rocks and realizes that it has 4 toes on its foot for some reason. They soon swim to the designated spot, and Saeed makes his way to the others' camp, but realizes that it's a sham, and even the entrance to the bunker isn't real. Michael's group goes to the designated point, but along the way, Sawyer spots the others and kills one of them. Jack has to tell everyone that Michael is leading them into a trap. The man then confesses to everything, including that he killed Ana Lucia and Libby. It turns out Michael was leading them to a completely different place, and along the way they found a pneumatic tube and a huge amount of filled-out logs from the Pearl Station. Suddenly they are put to sleep with special darts. They regain consciousness on the dock, bound and gagged. It turns out the others are led by none other than Henry. Suddenly the sky over the island begins to glow with a bright white light, and all the people cover their ears against the rumbling sound. Let's go back in time a little bit. Mr. Echo keeps pressing the button, but Locke is determined to stop him and bring the countdown to 0, as he is sure that nothing will happen. He convinces Desmond to do so, and together they manage to activate the blast doors, leaving Mr. Echo outside the room with the computer. The couple sits and waits for the timer to go to 0, but then Desmond learns that the main character's plane went down at the exact moment when he failed to press the button a few weeks ago, and the computer started giving an error. Eventually he entered the combination and everything normalized. Now Desmond doubts that nothing will happen if he doesn't press the button, but Locke reassures him. When the dial reaches 0, we see strange symbols instead of numbers, and everything starts to collapse. Metal objects are magnetized to the walls of the bunker. Desmond and Locke realize they've made a mistake. There's nothing left to do but use the fuse key. Desmond turns it, after which the bright light over the island disappears, and what happened to the bunker we will never know this season. Meanwhile, on the dock, everyone is recovering, and Henry gives Michael back his son Walt. He gives them a boat and tells them the direction by which they can leave the island. Henry then lets Hurley go. He asks him to go back to camp and inform the other main characters to stay away from that part of the island, and Kate, Sawyer, and Jack are taken away. In the final frames of the episode, we see at what polar station the two men get the message, "Electromagnetic anomaly detected." They then call Penny, Desmond's girlfriend, and tell her that they may have found what they were looking for. This is the end of the second season. Kate regains consciousness on the floor of the locker room. Tom, the bearded boat captain, offers the woman a bath and a change of clothes. Afterward, he takes her to their leader. It turns out his name is actually Ben, and he tells Kate that the next few weeks are going to be very unpleasant for them. During this time, Sawyer regains consciousness in the cage where the polar bears had previously lived. Soon, the two of them are taken to some place where they are engaged in what can only be described as hard labor. Sawyer tries to resist, but the others make it clear to him that if he continues, Kate will be hurt. Soon, feelings develop between them, and once, when they are returned to the cages, which are opposite each other, Kate manages to get out. She sneaks into Sawyer, and they sleep together. We also learn that they are now on a neighboring island, and getting to the main group, the main characters wouldn't have been possible anyway if they had been able to escape. Meanwhile, Jack regains consciousness in a chamber that looks like an aquarium. A woman named Juliet informs him that they are on a station called Hydra. She systematically earns his trust, and Ben does the same. They promise him that they will let him off the island if he cooperates. It turns out Ben has cancer in his spine, and since Jack is one of the best neurosurgeons in the world, he can perform the surgery. At first, Jack wanted to trade the surgery for the release of Sawyer and Kate. But later, Ben accidentally shows him a scene of the couple making love. Jack then agrees to perform the surgery if he is released from the island. And Juliet secretly asks Jack to kill Ben on the operating table, as she holds a grudge against him for something. We are shown Juliet's memories. She was an outstanding scientist, and dealt with the problem of the inability of women to have children. One day she is contacted by a man named Richard, and he offers a job related to her activities. Moreover, all this is very secret, and Juliet does not even know where her new job will be. Eventually, she agrees and gets to the island. She is promised only 6 months of work, but she has already spent more than 3 years here. It turns out that if someone on the island got pregnant, they would die a few months later. Juliet's job was to fix this, but the woman was never able to find a solution to the problem. During this time, she became close to Goodwin, but Ben was jealous of her, as he was in love with Juliet, and she did not reciprocate. When the plane with the main characters crashes in the sky, Ben sends Ethan and Goodwin to spy on the survivors, knowing that Goodwin will not return. It is for this that Juliet holds a grudge against Ben. Jack sabotages Ben's surgery, but gives up Juliet and also demands that Kate and Sawyer be released immediately. Upon learning of the betrayal, Ben asks that he and Juliet be left alone. The man promises that he will let her off the island and also allow Kate and Sawyer to leave the prison if Juliet convinces Jack to end the surgery. Ben notices that a spark has slipped between them, so he manipulates the couple. Eventually, Kate and Sawyer escape and are met by Alex, who also helps her boyfriend named Carl escape. He is being held in some kind of facility and zombified because of his recent disobedience. Kate, Sawyer, and Carl make it to the shore where a boat is hidden, but then the others who disobeyed Ben's orders show up. They intend to avenge their recently killed friends. However, the main characters are saved by Juliet. After that, the 3 of them swim to the main island. After getting there, Carl escapes to reunite with Alex, and Kate and Sawyer head back to the beach. Meanwhile, Jack continues to treat Ben, and soon the others leave this small island and head to the main island. We learn that the bunker where the main characters pressed the button exploded, but everyone who was inside was somehow miraculously thrown out. Locke comes to his senses and, in order to figure out what to do next, takes psychotropic substances. Then he realizes that he needs to save Mr. Echo. Together with Charlie, he finds him in a cave with a polar bear and brings him back to the camp. When Echo regains consciousness, he realizes that he needs to return to the body of his dead brother, and goes there. The rest of the characters follow him as he is injured. Arriving at the Pearl Station, the main characters go downstairs. Saeed fixes the equipment, and a man with an eye patch appears on one of the monitors. He notices that he's being followed and turns off the camera. At this time, Echo searches the plane, but his brother's body is missing somewhere. He has another vision, and his brother tells him that he must pay for his sins. Suddenly, black smoke appears and fatally wounds Echo. The other characters find him and Locke buries him where he died, so the people on the beach won't worry about another death. Meanwhile, we are shown what happened the moment the main characters didn't enter the numbers in the previous season. Desmond is transported back in time and finds himself in his girlfriend Penny's apartment. He has vague memories of the island and is trying to figure out what's going on. Desmond is glad to be in the past, as he loves Penny madly and wants to correct his mistakes. He goes to her father, Charles Widmore, and asks him to bless their marriage, but he refuses. Soon, he accidentally meets an elderly woman, Eloise Hawking, and she tells him that fate cannot be avoided, and that if someone is destined to die, then so be it. After a while, Desmond is knocked out with a bat and comes to his senses on the island. The man begins to feel a very strange sense of déjà vu, and as if he knows what will happen soon. He is constantly around Charlie, and at first glance performs some strange actions. However, we soon realize that he is saving Charlie's life. It turns out that Desmond has visions in which he sees the guy's death time after time, and no matter how many times he saves him, after a while, he faces death again. Charlie finds out about it and gets depressed. Hurley returns to the survivors and tells them what happened at the pier last season. He learns that Charlie will surely die, but thinks it's not true. Soon, Hurley finds an overturned van in the woods. Inside, he discovers the corpse of a certain Roger, who worked for Dharma. Eventually, the main characters manage to put the van on wheels and even start it. And Charlie is convinced that although he is destined to die, he can still enjoy the rest of his life. Let's also run through the notable flashbacks of the main characters. We learn that Jack was married and later divorced because work was more important to him. Claire always thought her father was dead, but he was actually Dr. Christian Shepherd. So Claire and Jack are half-brother and half-sister, but don't know it. Sawyer is imprisoned in Australia, but thanks to his skills as a con artist, he negotiates with the warden and is released. After winning the lottery, Hurley's father returns to the family, but it turns out to be all about the money. However, the guy is still happy to see him. We finally find out how Locke ended up in a wheelchair. It's not the first time his father ruins his life, and one day Locke learns that this con man is trying to scam another victim. Locke comes to his hotel room and demands that his father stop his evil deeds, or he will turn him into the police. The man initially agrees, but then throws his son from the 8th floor. Locke survives, but is crippled. We are also told the story of two characters, Nicky and Paolo. Back in Sydney, they stole diamonds, and during the crash, they thought they had lost them. However, they soon found the stones and started fighting with each other. Eventually, they were bitten by a spider, causing them to be temporarily paralyzed, and the survivors thought they were dead and buried them alive. Sawyer and Kate are back at the camp, and the woman wants to rescue Jack from captivity. Together with Locke and Sayid, they go in search of Rousseau, as she may know exactly where the others live. Eventually, Rousseau agrees to help them, learning that her daughter named Alex may be there. They soon come across a small house on a hill with an antenna. It is inhabited by Mikhail, the one-eyed man we saw earlier on the monitor at the Pearl Station. The main characters take him hostage, but he behaves calmly and informs them that he is the only surviving Dharma employee. According to him, some time ago the others fought the Dharma, and the others won, and since Mikhail was not involved in the conflict, he was spared. Eventually, however, the main characters realize that the man is actually working for the others. The equipment here is connected to another station located in the ocean. It is the same cable on the beach from the first season that leads to it. Thanks to these stations, submarines can come and go from the island. Soon, Sayid finds blueprints of the power lines and realizes where the base where all the others live is located. They take Mikhail with them, but Locke blows up this station for some reason, triggering the self-destruct system. Mikhail tells them that after the explosion of the Swan Station in the previous season, submarines can no longer get here, as it is impossible to pinpoint the exact location of the island. The main characters wonder why others simply will not leave the island, to which Mikhail replies that they will not understand, as they are on the list of the bad. This list was compiled by some great man, and Mikhail informs them that it is not Ben. Soon the group reaches strange pillars dug into the ground, and they realize that it is a protective perimeter. Locke pushes Mikhail through it, and the man falls dead. However, the main characters manage to get to the other side by building a kind of bridge out of a tree. After a while, they find a settlement of the others. While Locke and Rousseau have gone somewhere, the others sneak up on Jack, but then people with guns appear. Jack tells Kate that he made a deal with Ben. He and Juliet will be allowed off the island today, and Kate with Sayid promise to be released as soon as they sail away. In the meantime, Locke sneaks up on Ben and takes him hostage. It turns out Locke has brought explosives with him and is going to destroy the submarine, since he wants to stay on the island. Ben is stunned because he won't allow Juliet and Jack off the island, even though he promised, and Locke unknowingly helps him do it. Eventually, the man blows up the submarine. Ben then tells Locke that the old man is connected to the island for some reason and is very important. He tells him that the island can give him anything if he wants it badly enough, and takes him to a room where Locke sees his bound father. The old man then agrees to leave the base with the others. Others leave the living area, putting the main characters to sleep. Moreover, Kate wakes up chained to Juliet in the jungle. They decide to go back for Jack and Sayid. On the way, they are attacked by black smoke and Juliet is shocked, as she says she has never seen anything like it on the island before. The women make it to the security perimeter, and the smoke can't cross it. They eventually find Sayid and Jack and decide to return to the beach together. Once there, the survivors don't trust one of the others, but Jack steps in for her. We are shown that Juliet's infiltration of the survivors was planned by Ben, but she ends up telling Jack about it. Shortly after, Sun seeks Juliet's help. She wants to know when exactly her baby was conceived. As I remind you, Sun is pregnant. If before the crash, the baby is from her lover, and if after, it's from Jin. Together they go to the station where Claire was held, and there Sun finds out that she is pregnant with Jin's child. On the one hand, she is happy about it, but on the other hand, it means that she will die in the next few months, since those who get pregnant here do not survive on the island. Desmond has another vision, but this time related to his girlfriend Penny. He takes Hurley, Jin, and Charlie with him and goes to the cable leading to the ocean. There they set up camp, and at night they see a helicopter flying by, as well as someone who jumped from it with a parachute. The main characters try to find him, and on the way they discover a backpack with a satellite phone and a joint photo of Penny and Desmond. Eventually, they find the jumper, and Desmond thinks it's his girlfriend. However, after lowering her down from the tree, they realize it is not her. The woman's name is Naomi, and she is seriously injured. However, Mikhail, who actually survived that time, suddenly appears. He gives Naomi first aid and the main characters let him go. The woman, having heard the story of the survivors, is shocked, as in the outside world their airplane was found at the bottom of the ocean, and everyone who was on board is dead. After which the main characters and Naomi go to the beach. Locke and the others are setting up camp somewhere in the jungle. Ben informs the old man that if he wants to join them and learn the whole truth about the island, Locke needs to kill his father, Cooper. Only then will he be truly free. The old man refuses at first, then the others give him his bound father and tell him not to return until the deed is done. Soon Locke learns an interesting detail from Cooper's past. Then he goes to the beach to get Sawyer and brings him to the ship, where he locks him up with his father. It turns out Cooper is the man who stole from Sawyer's family in the past, causing his father to kill his mother and then himself. Sawyer kills Cooper and Locke thanks him for his help. Locke returns to the others and shows them his father's corpse. He then demands that Ben tell the truth about the island. It turns out that the others are led by a mysterious person named Jacob, but only Ben can communicate with him. Eventually, the man leads Locke to an abandoned cabin in the woods and forbids him to use a flashlight. Once inside, Ben communicates as if to himself, and Locke thinks he is just crazy. However, he suddenly hears the phrase, "Help me," and for a moment sees a figure in a chair. Walking back, Ben looks disappointed and leads Locke to a pit of corpses wearing Dharma clothes, after which he shoots him and throws the old man down. For a while, Locke lies paralyzed in the pit and even thinks about ending his life. However, Walt shows up and tells him that he still has a job to do. We are shown the past. In 1964, Ben is born, and his mother dies after giving birth. A father named Roger blames the boy for her death. After some time, he gets a job at Dharma and goes to the island with his son. However, he works there as a janitor and becomes depressed. A very important rule on the island is not to leave the protective barriers, as there are some natives here, that is others. Little Ben has visions in which he sees his dead mother. One day he wanders into the forest where he meets Richard. By the way, he looks exactly the same as he does 40 years later when he recruits Juliet. Little Ben informs him that he wants to join the others as he doesn't like the Dharma, and Richard says he'll have to wait a bit longer then. Years later, a grown-up Ben kills his father by blowing poison gas, and then all the other Dharma workers. In the present tense, Ben returns to the others. He gathers a team and sends them to the beach to kidnap some of the main characters. Upon learning of this, Alex runs into the woods to her boyfriend Carl and asks him to warn the survivors of the impending attack. The main characters return to the beach with Naomi, and she tells them that she was indeed hired by Penny, but Naomi never saw her. The helicopter took off from the rescue ship, and as it approached the given coordinates, the island seemed to appear out of thin air. However, the engines began to fail, and she had to jump off. Sawyer returns to the camp and tells them that Locke warned him that Juliet is a spy and that others will attack them in 3 days. However, Jack assures everyone that he knows about it, and he and Juliet are already preparing an escape plan. When the others come, they want to blow them up with dynamite. Except they need volunteers who can shoot. They will have to hit the dynamite when the enemies appear. Bernard, Jin, and Saeed become the volunteers. Then Carl appears and tells the main characters that the others will come already this night, so they must hurry. Desmond has another vision of the future. He tells Charlie that his death now determines whether Claire and the baby can leave the island. According to Desmond, he must drown in order for them to be saved. Meanwhile, Saeed tries to contact someone on Naomi's satellite phone, but like last time, any signal is interrupted by Rousseau's message. We learn that even if they disable that signal, there is still some sort of station underwater that will block all outgoing messages. Charlie realizes that this is his destiny and heads to the underwater station with Desmond to disable the jammer. All the other survivors head to the radio tower where Rousseau's message is being broadcast so that they can send a distress signal to Naomi's ship when the time comes. Having reached the right place, Desmond wants to go to the station instead of Charlie, but he does not let him do it. Descending under the water, the guy surfaces at the station, where he is met by armed women and they tie up Charlie. Mikhail arrives there as well. No matter for what reason, he kills the women, and Desmond, who has appeared, drives him away with a harpoon. At this time, Charlie goes to the communications room and disables the jammer. Suddenly, Penny comes on the line and informs him that she didn't send any boat after them. At that moment, Mikhail appears outside the window and blows himself up with a grenade. The room begins to fill with water. Charlie manages to warn Desmond that the boat is not Penny's, and after that, he dies. On the beach, 3 survivors set a trap for the others, but they fail to kill everyone, and the main characters are taken hostage. Ben learns that there is a ship near the island and goes with his adopted daughter Alex to the survivors to prevent them from sending a signal for help. He soon finds them and threatens that the others will kill the people on the beach if they don't comply. Jack decides not to listen to him and thinks his friends are dead, causing him to beat up Ben. However, the 3 gunmen were actually saved by Sawyer and Hurley, after which Sawyer kills Tom, even though he surrendered. Also, Rousseau is finally reunited with his daughter Alex, and Ben admits that he took her when she was a baby. Meanwhile, the survivors get to the antenna where Rousseau's message is being broadcast from. They turn it off and Naomi tries to contact her ship. Suddenly, Locke appears and fatally wounds Naomi. He threatens to kill Jack if he tries to send a distress signal. However, Jack decides to take a chance and contacts the ship. A man's voice on the line tells him that rescue teams will be arriving soon. We are also shown the future. Some survivors have left the island. Jack is depressed because they have to keep lying about what happened, and because they left their friends on the island. He meets with Kate and tells her that they need to go back. This is the end of the 3rd season. The whole season we will be shown simultaneously what happens in the present on the island and in the future, when some characters got out of it. For your convenience, I'll tell you everything in chronological order. Desmond returns to the camp. He tells everyone that Charlie is dead, and that the ship that is near the island is most likely not a rescue ship. Since most of the survivors have gone to the antenna, some characters decide to go to them and warn them of the danger. Along the way, Hurley gets separated from the group and notices the very same abandoned cabin. He looks inside. There he notices a man sitting on a chair, but suddenly someone else appears and Hurley escapes. Meanwhile, the main characters prepare to get off the island and notice that Locke has escaped, as well as Naomi, who was seriously wounded earlier. Soon, Kate finds her dying. A man on the phone asks to speak to Naomi, and she secretly tells him before she dies that her death was the fault of one of the survivors. Meanwhile, the rest of the characters head back to the beach. Eventually, all the groups meet up in the jungle. After sharing information with each other, they fear that the rescuers are not who they say they are. Ben and Locke add fuel to the fire by informing them that everyone is in danger. So the survivors split up. Some go with Locke and Ben to the former living area of the others, and Jack's group goes to the beach to meet the rescuers. On the way, they again see a helicopter from which another parachuter jumps. This is how the main characters meet Daniel Faraday. The man is a scientist and asks Jack and Kate to help find the rest of the team that jumped from the helicopter. The first person they meet is Miles. He accuses them of killing Naomi. Kate tries to convince him that a crazy Locke did it. Then Miles demands to be taken to the body of the deceased, and there he somehow becomes convinced of the truth of Kate's words. By the way, Miles is a medium and can actually communicate with the dead. Soon they come across Frank, the pilot of the helicopter. It turns out it didn't crash, and the man landed it nearby on high ground. We're shown Frank's past. It turns out that he was supposed to be the pilot of the plane that crashed with the main characters, but at the last moment switched with his colleague. Subsequently, the plane was found at the bottom of the ocean, and everything would be fine. Except that Frank realizes that it's fake, since on the video is clearly not the body of his colleague. Locke's group stumbles upon another parachutist. It's an anthropologist scientist named Charlotte. We are shown that in the past she found the skeleton of a polar bear wearing a Dharma collar buried in the Tunisian desert. In the present, Ben tried to kill the woman, but she was saved by a bulletproof vest. At this time, Jack's group realizes that Locke has Charlotte, so Sayid goes to him along with Miles. We learn that one of the objectives of the arrivals is to find Ben at all costs. Miles ends up staying with Locke's group, and Charlotte goes back to the helicopter. While everyone is doing their business, Faraday contacts the ship and asks to shoot a special missile at the island. The missile is launched, but it doesn't arrive until 30 minutes later. Faraday retrieves the watch and discovers that the time on and off the island is not synchronized. So he tells pilot Frank that when he flies back, he should keep strictly to the same course he flew here. Soon, Desmond comes to see them as well, but he discovers that Frank has never heard of his girlfriend Penny. While Jack goes to the beach with the scientists, Desmond and Sayid fly to the ship to reconnoiter the situation. The pilot gets a little off track, but eventually makes it to the ship. Except that when Jack's group arrives on the beach, Faraday tries to contact the ship and learns that the helicopter hasn't arrived yet. The scientist realizes that it's all the fault of the unsynchronization in time, but does not inform the survivors. In the meantime, the helicopter lands on the ship, but because the pilot has lost his route, Desmond's consciousness begins to flit back and forth between 1996 and 2004. Roughly speaking, Desmond from the present is sometimes transported to the past, and Desmond from the past at this moment jumps into the present. Faraday realizes what's going on and explains to Desmond over the phone that he needs to find him at the university in the past and transmit some parameters for his theoretical time machine. There, young Faraday tries to synchronize Desmond and tells him that if nothing is done, he will soon die. The only way to save himself is to find a constant in 1996 and in 2004. That is, something that exists in both timelines. Desmond realizes it's Penny. In the past, he asks his beloved to pick up the phone 8 years from now when he calls. In the present, Desmond tries to find the phone on the ship. However, it turns out that there is someone on the ship who is sabotaging their work. He has broken the engine and also damaged the equipment to communicate with the outside world. Sayid ends up fixing the equipment for a short period of time. Desmond manages to get in touch with Penny, and he goes back to normal. On the beach, Jack notices that Faraday and Charlotte have disappeared somewhere. Soon, the survivors find out that they went to the station Tempest, where, according to Ben and others, they want to release poison gas and kill everyone on the island. When Jack and Juliet find the scientists, it turns out that they are trying to shut down the station and prevent Ben from being able to release the gas, as he did 18 years ago when he killed all of Dharma's employees. The couple ends up shutting down the station, and Jack kisses Juliet, even though he's actually in love with Kate. Meanwhile, Miles meets with Ben and offers him a deal. For $3 million, the guy is ready to tell his employer that he found Ben dead. However, Ben does not want to cooperate, as he clearly has his own agenda. Soon he tells Locke that in fact the ship was sent by Charles Widmore, Penny's father. Turns out he's had his eye on the island for a long time and wants to use it for his own purposes, but couldn't find it until now. If his men get their hands on it, they're sure to kill everyone without exception. Charles Widmore even faked an airplane crash so that no one would guess that it fell on this island. Also, Ben admits that there is a spy of his on the ship. It was he who damaged the engine and communications with the outside world. On the ship, Desmond and Saeed meet a captain named Galt, and he tells them that he was hired by Charles Widmore to find Ben. According to his employer, it was Ben who faked the plane crash and even got 324 corpses somewhere to do it. However, we never find out exactly who Ben or Charles Widmore actually did it. Captain Galt also tells them that as they approached the island, some of the crew members started acting strangely. Some threw themselves overboard, some went insane, and some had the same symptoms as Desmond. However, they were already dead. Soon Desmond and Saeed learn that Michael is on the ship. He's Ben's spy. It turns out that when he and his son got off the island, they had to hide that they were alive. Michael is haunted by guilt for everything he's done. The man gives Walt to his mother to raise him, and then decides to end his life. However, nothing comes of it. That's when Tom, one of the others, shows up and tells him that the island won't let him die. And if Michael wants to redeem himself, he can. He is told that Charles Widmore is going to send a ship to the island, and if it gets there, everyone on the island will die. So Michael's task is to become a sailor and prevent the crew from swimming to their destination. Subsequently, the man on Ben's orders broke the engine and destroyed the communication system with the outside world. In the present, Saeed turns Michael into the ship's captain. He is beaten and locked in his cabin. Also, the characters learn that the helicopter flew on some mission to the island with armed mercenaries. Locke allows Ben to move freely around the village. But soon the man secretly asks Rousseau to hide Alex, as they are in danger. Mother and daughter, as well as Carl, leave the place. However, soon they come across mercenaries from the ship. They kill Carl with Rousseau, and Alex is taken prisoner, as she confesses that she is Ben's daughter. The mercenaries attack the settlement and kill many survivors, but none of the main characters. The armed men demand that Ben surrender, or they will kill his daughter. Ben thinks they are bluffing, but they execute Alex in front of him. An angry Ben locks himself in a secret room and activates black smoke, which attacks the mercenaries. The rest of the main characters escape from the village in the meantime. Sawyer, Miles, Claire, and her baby go to the beach. Along the way, they meet Frank the pilot, who helps them hide from the mercenaries who survived the black smoke attack. During the night, Claire has a strange dream. When she wakes up, she leaves the baby by the fire and goes into the jungle for her father, Christian Shepherd, who I will remind you died in Australia. Jack carried his body home, but on the island the coffin was empty. In the morning, Sawyer learns that Claire is missing. He does not find her, and together with the child and Miles head to the beach. Meanwhile, the mercenaries return to the ship. Their leader, Martin, is angry that his men were injured but never captured Ben. He tries to shoot Michael, but as before, the island won't let him die. Martin, having read the new instructions left by Charles Widmore, takes over the ship. He kills the captain and the doctor, then returns to the island by helicopter to complete his mission. At night, Saeed steals a boat and heads to the beach to begin evacuating the survivors. We're shown the past. As a child, Locke was a gifted boy, but too easily influenced. His life was watched over by Richard, one of the others, who apparently doesn't age. Back in the day, he tried to recruit Locke, but he failed the test, so the others forgot about him for a while until he became crippled and was led to believe he should go on a journey. In the present day, Ben and Locke decide to talk to Jacob and find out what to do next. They take Hurley with them, as he is also connected to the island and knows where the cabin is, which changes location from time to time. Locke goes inside where he sees Christian Shepherd and Claire. They speak on Jacob's behalf and inform Locke that the island is in danger and needs to be moved. Locke relays these words to Ben and they head to the Orchid Station. The mercenaries are waiting for them there, and Ben surrenders to them, knowing that they can't kill him. Sawyer tells Jack about the mercenaries who killed the survivors. They head to a helicopter that recently flew deep into the island. The pair soon find it and Frank, who has been handcuffed. At this time, Saeed arrives by boat on the beach. He instructs the others to start the evacuation, and himself, along with Kate, goes to help Jack. On the way, they bump into others and agree to cooperate. If the main characters help get rid of the mercenaries, they will be allowed to sail off the island. They eventually kill the mercenaries and free Ben, who returns to Orchid Station with Locke. Meanwhile, Sun, Jin, and Claire's baby are the first to reach the ship. However, they learn that the mercenaries have planted the bomb on the ship. They have attached a transmitter there, which is supposed to activate the explosive device. It is impossible to disarm the bomb, and Michael suggests using liquid nitrogen. As long as the transmitter is frozen, it won't explode. And in the meantime, everyone on the ship is evacuated. Locke and Ben take a secret elevator down to the Orchid Station. There, the old man watches another tape where a scientist tells that in this place they studied such a phenomenon as time travel. Suddenly appears Mercenary Martin, who survived the recent shootout. He shows the main characters a device. If the mercenary dies, the ship will explode and everyone in it will die. Ben kills Martin without remorse. Then he tells Locke that he's going to move the island. But because of that, he can't come back here. So now Locke will be in charge. When the old man returns to the others, they will tell him the whole truth about the island. Ben goes down into the cave where there is some ancient device. He turns it and the cave lights up with a bright light, after which Ben finds himself in the desert. Meanwhile, Locke goes to the others, who welcome him home. Let's go back in time a little bit. Jack, Kate, Saeed, Sawyer, Hurley, and Frank leave the island by helicopter, but because the gas tank is punctured, they need to get rid of the extra weight to make the flight. So Sawyer, for Kate's sake, jumps into the water and soon swims to the island. The rest of the main characters reach the ship and learn about the bomb. Jin and Michael pour liquid nitrogen on the bomb, but see that someone has already sent a detonation signal, which means that time is almost running out. The remaining survivors take Desmond, Sun, Kate, and the infant with them. They take off without waiting for Jin, who runs out onto the deck. Michael runs out of liquid nitrogen at this time. Christian Shepherd suddenly appears, telling him that he can go now. The ship explodes, and Frank directs the helicopter to the island. However, like magic, it disappears right before their eyes. The survivors fall into the ocean and drift for a while on a lifeboat. Soon they are found by a ship, this time run by Penny. The main characters realize that they will not be able to explain to the public everything that happened on the island. In addition, if they reveal the truth, their remaining friends and themselves will be in danger at the hands of Charles Widmore. So they decide to lie about what happened. Desmond and Frank stay on Penny's ship. The rest of them get on a boat and swim to the nearest island, where they are finally rescued. The 6 survivors give a press conference where they tell everyone their rescue story. Like they managed to escape from the sinking plane at the last moment and spent several months on a tiny island. Kate had a baby there, and they eventually made it to dry land. They received a large compensation from the airline and started living a normal life. Soon, Sun has a baby with Jin, and a short time later, she buys out her father's company. She eventually contacts Charles Widmore to discuss the island. Ben, finding himself in the desert, also states to Widmore after a while. He says that while they can't kill each other for whatever reason, he can take the life of his daughter Penny in retaliation for his men killing Alex. To which Widmore replies, the island belongs to him, and that one day he will take it from Ben. Meanwhile, Saeed finally meets his lover Nadia, but she is soon killed. That's when Ben shows up and manipulates the man, assuring him that Widmore's mercenaries did it. So Saeed kills his men on Ben's orders. Hurley gets off the island and returns home, but soon starts seeing hallucinations of his dead friends. The guy is sent back to the asylum and doesn't want to come out, but he is dragged out of there by Saeed, as he believes he is in danger. Meanwhile, Kate is acquitted in court after a while, and she raises Claire's son. Jack continues to work as a neurosurgeon, and feelings arise between him and Kate, and he learns that Claire was his sister, so her child named Aaron is his nephew. Soon Jack becomes depressed about the fact that they left their friends on the island. One day he learns of the funeral of a man he knows. He shows up at the memorial hall at night, and we see Locke's corpse there. Ben appears and tells him that if he wants to return to the island, the whole 6 of them must return, as well as Locke's corpse. That's the only way the island will take them back. This is the end of the 4th season. After Ben has moved the island, the survivors are thrown chaotically through time and accompanied by bright flashes. In other words, to an outside observer they seem to disappear, but in fact they remain in the same place but in a different time. And this does not affect the others. John Locke, not realizing what is happening, finds himself in the past and is shot in the leg by Ethan. Another flash occurs and he is visited by Richard, who tells him that Locke himself told him where to look for him in the future and ordered him to help him heal his wound. Richard says that the only way to save the people on the island is to go to the outside world and convince the 6 who escaped to go back. In doing so, Locke will have to die. After another outbreak, Locke realizes that this is his destiny, and the only familiar way to get off the island is at Orchid Station. Faraday and the remaining survivors finally figure out what's happening to them. However, he realizes that if they do nothing, they will die because the brain cannot cope with such tension. At first, the main characters wanted to change the past and warn everyone about various dangers, but the scientist informs them that it is impossible to do. Everything that was is bound to happen. When they are in the past, Faraday separates from the group and knocks on the bunker at the Swan Station. There he meets Desmond and asks him to find his mother in the future to save them all. In the present, Desmond wakes up and remembers this conversation. But more about that a little later. On the beach, the survivors are once again transported and attacked by someone, with many unimportant characters dying in the process. Soon the group runs into others, but they are rescued by Locke. The remaining survivor turns out to be Charles Widmore. Locke releases him to follow him and discover their camp. Getting there, the main characters learn that recently the American military found this island and sent soldiers here. But they encountered resistance in the form of locals, that is, the others. The military brought with them a hydrogen bomb, but it was damaged and radiation began to leak out. Faraday then suggests they bury it as deep as possible. Meanwhile, Locke explains to Richard that he will be their leader in the future. The man was doubtful at first, but agrees to visit Locke when he is born to see if he is worthy of becoming one of them. After all this, the survivors travel back in time. Meanwhile, we learn that Jin survived the explosion of the ship. He also begins to be thrown through time and meets up with Danielle Rousseau's crew in the past. It turns out one day they were attacked by black smoke and it dragged their friend into the underground part of some temple. The men went inside to get him, and when they came back, they were changed. This is why Rousseau killed them, as they were going to hurt her and her child. Jin ends up traveling through time and soon joins the rest of the main characters. The survivors start having nosebleeds, which means they will soon die from the constant time jumps. Locke is confident that he can fix everything if he can get to the Orchid Station, teleport to the outside world, and bring the 6 back to the island. So the main characters go to the station. Charlotte becomes sick, and Faraday stays with her while the others go ahead. The woman before her death reports that she was on this island as a child when her parents worked for Dharma. One day, a man very similar to Faraday approached her and asked her never to return to this island, after which she dies. And towards the end of the season, Faraday does meet little Charlotte and tells her this, even though he realizes that the future can't be changed. Meanwhile, the survivors make it to Orchid Station, but find themselves in a time when it wasn't built yet. In its place, however, is a well. Locke says goodbye to everyone and goes downstairs. The old man finds the same mechanism that Ben found in the previous season. Christian Shepherd, Jack's late father, shows up and says that the mechanism has malfunctioned. Locke must push the lever and return to the outside world. There he must find the survivors and convince them to come back. and they can do it with the help of a woman named Eloise Hawking. Locke turns the mechanism and is transported to the Tunisian desert. Soon he is found by Charles Widmore's men. Widmore wants to help Locke get everyone back to the island, so he supplies him with money and information about where everyone is. Locke meets with each of the survivors, but he never manages to convince anyone, so he decides to end his life as Richard advised him to do. Suddenly, Ben bursts into the apartment and at first talks him out of his rash actions. However, after learning from him that it is possible to return to the island thanks to Eloise Hawking, he kills Locke with his own hands. As we know from the end of the previous season, Jack meets Ben, and he convinces the surgeon to return to the island, but first he has to convince the rest of the main characters. Meanwhile, Sun is conspiring with Charles Widmore. She wants to kill Ben, believing him to be responsible for Jin's death. But when Ben reveals that her husband actually survived, joins the main characters. The other characters also meet together and Ben tries to convince them to return, but Kate, Syed, and Hurley refuse. At this time, Desmond remembers that once in the past met with Faraday and he asked to save them, and for this he needs to find his mother, who turns out to be Eloise Hawking. Eventually Desmond, Jack, Ben, and Sun cross paths with her. She takes them to a special bunker, where she tells them that many years ago scientists found proof of the existence of the island, but could not find its location. Then they realize that it is constantly moving, so they created an algorithm that calculates its position. But that's not always enough. The island itself has to be ready for you. So the only way for the main characters to get to the island is to repeat the airplane crash. And they must do it in the next 36 hours on a certain flight, otherwise they will have to wait for a few more years. And if for some reason they don't all come back, anything can happen. Desmond says he's not going back to the island. He's here to relay her son's words that they need help. Eloise Hawking doesn't react, and then Desmond leaves. Ben realizes that this is the perfect chance to track down Penny, Charles Widmore's daughter, and avenge Alex. However, when he tries to kill her, Desmond stops him and beats him up. Jack, Sun, and Ben arrive at the airport and board the plane. The rest of the main characters also join them for one reason or another. Of note, Kate gives Aaron to Claire's mother, and Hurley meets a mysterious man who convinces him to return to the island. The guy buys out all the remaining seats on the airplane to avoid unnecessary casualties. However, due to a mistake, the tickets are still sold out, and there are passengers on board. We also learn that the pilot is Frank, who realizes what is about to happen. Soon the plane begins to shake, and there is a bright flash. Jack regains consciousness on the island, and soon finds Kate and Hurley. Suddenly, a minivan pulls out of the woods and Jin in a Dharma uniform comes out to meet them. We learn that the main characters have traveled back in time, when Dharma stations were still under construction on the island. Turns out after Locke pulled the lever, the survivors were transported back to 1974. That's why the flashes stopped. They stumble upon the Dharma staff, and Sawyer convinces their leader named Horace that the ship with the main characters has crashed. At first, the scientists wanted to chase them off the island, but the survivors decided to stay, as they wanted to find their friends. So 3 years have passed. Sawyer and Juliet live together, and the man became the head of security. They have been searching the jungle all this time in the hope of finding their friends, until one day Jin discovers Jack, Kate, and Hurley. Sawyer arrives and explains to them the whole situation, and that the future cannot be changed. The only way for them not to live in the woods and constantly hide from others is to settle down with Dharma. Sawyer and Juliet make up documents and act as if they are new employees who have just arrived on a submarine. The plan succeeds, and the main characters are accepted into the Dharma. Meanwhile, Saeed comes to his senses in the forest and is discovered by the guards. So he cannot be presented as one of the newcomers, and the man is imprisoned, believing that he is one of the others. For some time Saeed is interrogated, but he says nothing. Soon he is visited by little Ben, who also thinks that Saeed is one of the others. I will remind you that in the past he met Richard and wanted to join them. Ben intends to help Saeed escape, hoping that this way he can gain the trust of the others. The man is not going to change Ben's mind, and they end up running away. As they leave the residential area, Saeed shoots the boy, hoping to kill him and change the future. Afterward, the man escapes into the woods. As we already know, the future cannot be changed, so Ben survives but is at death's door. The main characters realize who is in front of them, but they can't let the child die. The only way to save him is to give him to others, so Sawyer and Kate secretly take him there. A surprised Richard agrees to help, but warns that afterward Ben will change and never be the same, as he will become one of the others and will likely lose some of his memory. Richard takes the boy to the very temple, after which Danielle Rousseau's team changes. We are transported a bit forward in time. In 1988, Charles Widmore, being the leader of the others, orders young Ben to kill Rousseau and her child. However, he is hesitant to do so, so he simply kidnaps Alex. Returning to the camp, he expresses disagreement with the order of their leader. And a few years later, Ben takes over and banishes Widmore from the island for breaking the rules by becoming the father of a daughter in the outside world. In 1977, little Ben comes to his senses, where he meets Charles Widmore, who tells him that he is now one of them. Miles discovers that Pierre Chang, the head Dharma scientist, is his father, whom he has never seen. His mother said he had simply disappeared from their lives. At first, Miles tried to avoid Pierre, but as fate would have it, he kept crossing paths with him. Also in conversation with Hurley, they learn that both can communicate with the dead, although their abilities work differently. Soon Faraday returns to the island, having spent all those 3 years in the outside world trying to figure out how to get them back to their own time. We are shown Faraday's youth. He was a brilliant kid from his childhood, and after graduating from university, he began to study experimental physics. Except the man did experiments on himself and damaged his brain. One day he is contacted by Charles Widmore, who turns out to be his father. The old man offers him to go to the island, where Faraday will get rid of his illness. His mother, Eloise Hawking, also wants her son to go to the island. Back in 1977. Faraday meets with Dr. Chang and warns that in the next 6 hours there will be some kind of disaster on the island, so it is necessary to evacuate all staff from the island. He also informs him that he is from the future and Miles is his son. The doctor doesn't really believe in all this, but just in case he starts the evacuation, because at the moment they are drilling a well on the Swan Station. There is a pocket of colossal amounts of energy there, and if it is damaged, there is no knowing what will happen. Faraday explains to the rest of the main characters that although he used to say that the future can't be changed, he made calculations and realized that there is one way. If you detonate a hydrogen bomb in the well that is now being drilled at the Swan Station, the anomaly will not appear. The bunker won't be built, no numbers need to be entered, and therefore their plane will never crash and everything will be fine. He wants to borrow the hydrogen bomb from the others, since he asked them to bury it in 1954. Soon they get to the others and Faraday demands to be taken to Richard. He acts crazy and a certain woman shoots him in the back. It turns out to be his young mother named Eloise Hawking. A dying Faraday realizes that his mother knew she would kill him when she sent him to this island. Before he dies, he asks her to help the remaining survivors find the hydrogen bomb. After a brief discussion, Richard, Eloise, and Jack go to get the bomb and are soon joined by Said. It turns out that the others did not bury it, but hid it in an ancient temple under the Dharma residential complex. At first, the main characters did not understand how to deliver a multi-ton bomb to the right place, but Said explains that according to Faraday's calculations, they will need only its core. After extracting it, they say goodbye to the others and make their way to the surface. However, when they try to escape from the camp, Said is seriously injured. That's when Hurley, Jin, and Miles show up. They help Said and Jack get away from the living area. Meanwhile, Juliet, Sawyer, and Kate meet Bernard and Rose in the jungle, who have been living quietly on the island all these years. The main characters want to stop Jack, believing that it is the explosion of the hydrogen bomb that will set off the chain of events rather than prevent it. Soon Jack and Sawyer meet and fight each other. but eventually, Sawyer agrees to go along with Jack. All the main characters make it to the construction site of Swan Station, where just then an accident happens and all the metal objects get sucked into the well. A battle ensues as Dharma considers the survivors spies of the others. The main characters win, and Jack throws the bomb down, but it doesn't explode. Juliet is pulled into the well, and the miraculously surviving woman hits the bomb with a rock and it explodes. I've only told you what happened to some of the main characters who returned to the island. I haven't told you about Ben, Frank, and Sun. We learn that the plane landed on the second island, where the Hydra station is located. And later we realize that the characters here are not in the past, but in the present. That is several years after the 6 survivors left the island. Sun and Ben try to understand what is happening and realize that the rest of the main characters are not here. Since there was a flash during the crash and they disappeared from the plane, Sun goes to the main island with Frank, but the beach is empty. They get to the living area where they meet Christian Shepherd. He shows a photograph taken in 1977, which shows the main characters. After landing on the island, people try to figure out what's going on, and they run into Locke, who according to the lists wasn't on the plane. The old man says he remembers dying, and the island resurrected him. Ben is shocked since he's never seen the island do something like that, and Locke doesn't take offense to the fact that he killed him. Ben informs him that he needs to redeem himself for returning to the island, and it's up to Black Smoke to judge him. The two of them make their way to the living area where they meet Frank and Sun. Ben goes down to the secret room where he tries to summon the smoke, but it doesn't appear. Locke then says that he knows where to find it from somewhere, and together with a surprised Ben, they head to that very temple. As Ben goes downstairs, Black Smoke comes and envelops him. His dead daughter Alex appears and says she knows Ben's intention to kill Locke again, so orders him not to touch the old man and to obey him unconditionally, or else the island will kill Ben. Frank decides to return to his plane to a Hydra island, where he is taken hostage by some passengers led by Ilana, who are now behaving rather strangely. They load some big crate onto a boat and together with Frank go to the big island. There they find Jacob's cabin, but after learning that someone else is using it, they burn it down. Meanwhile, Locke meets Richard and asks him to follow him. The old man orders Richard to go into the woods and help him when he shows up here during time travel. Be sure to heal his wound and tell him to go to the outside world and sacrifice himself so the rest of them can return to the island. An uncomprehending Richard agrees, and in fact we saw what happened next. When asked by Locke how he knows all this, the old man replies that the island told him. The group then returns to the others' camp, where Locke smugly says that they are all going to Jacob to give them answers. The others have never seen him, so they willingly agree to follow Locke. We are transported back in time. A man named Jacob is sitting on a beach, with a huge statue of the Egyptian goddess Tauret standing in the background. A man in black walks up to Jacob and says that although they can't kill each other, he's sure to find a loophole someday, after which he leaves. Throughout their lives, every main character in the series has encountered Jacob in one way or another. It was he who, one could say, resurrected Locke when he fell out of a window and became a cripple. Jacob persuaded Hurley to return to the island, giving him a guitar case, which the guy took with him. He also met a woman named Ilana and asked her for help. Ilana caught Sayid and brought him to the plane. She ended up surviving the landing, and as we remember, with a group of like-minded people burned down the cabin. In the present tense, Locke tells Ben that he's not going to ask Jacob for advice, but wants to kill him. He is angry with him since he is the one who allowed all of this to happen. Locke informs Ben that he will be the one to commission the murder. The man is shocked as he has sworn to his daughter's ghost, meaning the island to obey all of Locke's orders. Ben also admits that he has never seen Jacob, and all communication has been through Richard. Eventually, the others reach the base of that ruined statue, and Richard opens a secret passage where Locke and Ben enter. Shortly afterward, Ilana's group approaches the statue and reveals exactly what they've been carrying in a crate all this time. It's Locke's corpse. Meanwhile, fake Locke and Ben meet up with Jacob. Ben demands an answer as to why he could never see him. When Jacob asks who he actually is, an enraged Ben stabs him with a knife. And before he dies, he utters the phrase, "They're coming." Then fake Locke throws Jacob's body into the fire. Let me make it clear what happened, since all this time jumping might confuse you. The man in black couldn't kill Jacob, so he came up with a cunning plan that stretched over many years. After the second plane crashed on a small island, he took on the guise of the dead Locke, who by this time everyone trusted, and people had no problem believing that he had been resurrected, since he was special. Taking advantage of this, the man in black convinced Richard to tell Locke that he needed to go to the outside world and convince everyone to return to the island and then die. After learning this information, Locke, in turn, jumps back in time and tells Richard that he will be in charge of them in the future and is special. Later, Richard found little Locke, but did not notice anything special about him. However, all of this has led to what we have here. The others are convinced that Locke is special, and the man in black convinces Ben to kill Jacob, which he does. This is the end of the 5th season. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the like button. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.